Welcome back, guys. So as you can see, I've got three windows going here. I've got my Visual Studio Code window, which we have opened for the first time now. And then here's my web browser with our app that is running. And here is the terminal or the command prompt on Windows, which is still running our project. So you can see here, if I refresh this, it works fine. Everything is going, etc. However, if I hit Control C, I have to hit it twice, and we can terminate this batch job. It's Command C on a Mac. You can see we're open here and nothing's happening. If I decide to refresh this now, it's probably going to freak out unless it's saved and cached somewhere. No, it says the site can't be reached. So I wanted to show you guys something here first. We can open our project now. I'm going to hit open folder here, file, and we're going to go to dev. That's the directory I was in. And here is SurfSpots, the app that we created. This will be wherever you guys decide to put it. Maybe you put it in your home directory and it'll be there. Mine was under Barry/dev. If you remember from my command prompt, it was Barry/dev/SurfSpots. We're going to click on SurfSpots and we're going to say select folder when we did our open folder there. And now we'll see all the folders that were going on here. And you can click on various files. It will show you all the code in these various files. But before I get started on all of that, I want to mention, if you are checking this out from GitHub, you will notice that the node modules folder, which is very full, doesn't exist. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to continue to delete that. It takes a while to delete this. I might actually have to go do it somewhere else because it does not like my setup when I do that. So delete that permanently. Give it some time. So usually you won't have a node modules thing here. That's what that npm install thing did. I'm also going to delete the SvelteKit because this is also generated when you run your program. So node modules take you a while to delete. I'm going to skip to when that's done. Now bear in mind, while that's happening, this is only to demonstrate what's going on because it takes long. You don't need to do it yourself. I would have put a note up there. So it's finally done now. And I wanted to show that you don't only need to run the console in here. You could also run it straight from VS Code. So we can get rid of this. And if I hit Control tilde, that's the button that's usually next to 1 on your keyboard. It's a little squiggly line, essentially. This is the tilde sign over here, this small little squiggle there. And that opens a console log right, not a console, it opens a console, like a terminal, right where your project is in /dev/surfspots. So this is great. So I can actually run, and I want to show you this, I can run npm install. This is one of those steps, that was like the first step after you cd'd into your directory, is run npm install, and that will automatically create your node modules folder, as you will see here. And obviously it does take a while. I think it won't take as long the second time. There we go, it's much quicker this time. But you see that created the node modules folder. And again, if we want to get our app running, I wanted to show in the package JSON, we're here already, there's a bunch of scripts. And these scripts, you can essentially run npm run dev, or you could run, npm run build or package or preview. We're only going to be focusing on dev right now. So I'm going to say run dev. I'm not going to do the -- open because we already have this open here. That's what the -- open does. So if I just run npm run dev, it runs SvelteKit dev in the background. So that runs and our project is running. So if I refresh this page over here, we'll see it's all working again. Anyways, that said, also when we run npm run dev, it creates this .SvelteKit folder here. So I just wanted to show you that the node modules folder and the .SvelteKit folder do not actually show up as, part of your source code. They're not important. We never have to go into them like ever. It's just stuff that is used in the background by your programs. If you're familiar with other front-end frameworks, you should be familiar with Node and node modules. Common thing, people often forget to install their node modules. Remember that npm install there that we ran? Very important. If you see stuff that did not recognize this thing, it generally means you need to install your node modules because you would have either added something to your dependencies and forgotten to install, or you would have pulled the project down from a repo and they don't store the node modules online because they're so big and clunky. You end up rather wanting to let the user download it on their side and keep a copy on their side, because you don't want to constantly be pushing up and updating that on your actual Git repo. Anyways, that said, let's go through all the files in detail, or little detail for the parts that aren't important. First of all, tsconfig. Don't worry about this at all. If you're familiar with TypeScript, you will be familiar with a tsconfig file. This is just a default file that they've set. It's sort of your default rules for how TypeScript will work. Now, we're not going to be focusing on TypeScript too much during this course, so don't stress about this. We're not going to touch this file ever again. I'm just showing you it. Secondly, we have the svelte.config.js. We will be touching this file briefly for just some extra little pre-processes that go on. But this is also pretty much like the equivalent of React has Webpack. They often use that. And this just allows you to update your build rules a little bit. So we'll go into this in more detail later when we actually want to adapt it. But for now, this is where your svelte.config file is. If you get deeper into using SvelteKit, you will get to use this more often. Next up is our Readme page. This is just your Svelte Readme. In fact, if we go to, I'm going to SvelteKit new project GitHub, and it will probably be right here, svelte.js/kit. It's going to be this, read this first overview, all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. I think it will be create file. I don't even know, but this is a Readme file, obviously, over here. And over here, they have their own little Readme file. So we'll see this somewhere along the line. Like, this is just a markdown file. We're actually going to be using markdown files in this project, so you'll get familiar with this soon enough. Markdown, really cool language if you don't know it. It's just a great way to write documentation easily. Or in our case, we're going to use it to write our blogs. So really cool, really wonderful. Let's ditch that there. Next up is our package JSON. This is pretty much where you say these are the node modules we need. All of our stuff is in dev dependencies because, you know, our project doesn't like need to run on nodes, so that you don't have main dependencies. Like, they're just dev dependencies that help you build your little native app, which is wonderful. Comes with a bunch of scripts, so that's what your npm run scripts can be. And yeah, very common in most front-end projects, pretty much all front-end projects that use Node. The package lock JSON, this gets built automatically. See, I can delete this, and again, if I go back, I'm going to cancel and run npm install. My package lock file will come back. If you use a package manager like yarn, you'll get a yarn lock file. And you shouldn't have a package lock and a yarn lock. So if you're using npm, delete the yarn lock file, and if you're using yarn, delete the package lock file. Next up is Prettier Rc. This file just sets your configuration for how Prettier is going to work. If you're used to working with Prettier, you can change this to your likings. I don't mind. It's actually good to divert away from what I do and do what you're comfortable doing, because that way you learn better, and it's just good to do your own thing while I teach you. If you're not familiar with Prettier, don't stress. We're not going to touch this. We're just like, I wanted it to be set up in case people are familiar with Prettier. Similar thing with ESLint RC, the config file. This, again, just sets up your ESLint rules, etc., and what's going on. We're not going to be changing this. We're not going to be using it. npm rc, we're never going to touch this. Don't touch it. Leave it alone. And then git ignore. This is when you push your stuff up to a Git repo. These folders get ignored. So this is all the little config files. Next up, I'm going to dive into static and stores. So first of all, static, the only thing in here is our favicon. This is where you'll keep all your public, you know, folders and files and stuff. So if you were going to keep any other icons, you'd keep it in static, and then you can reference it from the source. Right. All of that said, finally, let's jump into the source. And this is where the bulk of our code is going to go. First of all, don't stress about this global.d.ts. This is just a definition file for TypeScript. Again, also not something you're going to touch unless you're an experienced TypeScript user. And then now, our app.html. So this is an HTML file. The only difference in this HTML file to what you might not be used to is this %sign svelte.head and %sign svelte.body. Do not change these, because these are used as like a string replace. So part of the build process is they will replace this string and this head. So you can change other things in the body and in this HTML here. I don't really recommend it because you can just do it inside Svelte itself. So this is also a file we're not really going to touch. So that means the only folder that we're going to touch is roots and the other folders that we create in source. And then maybe some config changes and package updates later on. So far, we only have one index.svelte file, and that is it. Welcome to SvelteKit, and then a paragraph tag saying visit our kit.svelte. And that's what we have here. We can say welcome to surfspots.com, because why not? And then if I refresh that, oh, my application is not running. I wanted to show you something. I'm going to run Npm Run Dev. So that will run. And then we see it automatically updates. I could remove the .com, and when I click save here, it actually works and shows you things. I did want to do something. I want to make this a bit bigger. I'm so sorry for those of you who struggled to see, but you would have been working with your own thing anyway. Here we have welcome to surf spots. Again, we can say spots and save, and it updates automatically. There are sometimes this doesn't update automatically, and when that occurs, you just have to refresh this page. It's usually when jumping and routing between pages, but we'll deal with routing later. Anyways, all of that said, that is basically how this, let's change this back to surf spots. That is basically all the files you need to know. Obviously, from here, you're going to become more familiar with it as we add new files. I'm very excited to dive into actually building a layout first in the next video. Right, see you then. Cheers.